The gym smelled of sweat and blood, and the sound of gloves hitting punching bags echoed across the walls. It was an old gym in the rough side of Chicago, a place where broken dreams hung in the air like dust. Every Saturday, crowds gathered to watch the underground fights. And they didn't come for fairness, they came for blood. Jamal Steel Fist Barnes was the star of this place, tall, ripped, full of swagger. He hadn't lost a single fight in 2 years. He'd knock out anyone who dared enter the ring. With him, his mouth was as sharp as his fists, and he loved to humiliate people in front of the crowd. He stood in the center of the ring, shirtless, gloved hands resting on the ropes, sweat glistening on his chest. Ain't nobody left to fight. "Emmy?" he shouted, grinning. His friends laughed. The crowd roared. Everyone was scared of him, and he loved that. Then the gym door creaked open. Everyone turned. A young black woman walked in slowly, head down, with a teenage boy by her side. She wore a plain hoodie, jeans, and worn-out sneakers. Her hair was tied in a bun, and her hands were bandaged, not like a fighter, but like someone used to hard work. No one knew her name yet, but her presence made the room quiet for a second. Just a second, then came the laughter. "What's this, family day?" Someone joked, "You lost, sweetheart?" Another voice called. Raina Washington ignored the noise. She wasn't there to impress anyone. She had brought her little brother to watch the fights. He had been struggling at school, bullied and angry, and she thought maybe a boxing match would inspire him. She had no idea she would become the center of it all. They sat quietly near the back. Jamal noticed her. He didn't like the way she didn't look at him, the way she acted like he wasn't important. He stepped down from the ring and walked toward her, the crowd making way like he was royalty. "Hey," he said, his voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "You here to fight or babysit?" Raina looked up, her eyes calm but serious. "I'm just here to watch," she said. Jamal smirked. "You sure? 'Cause you look like you got opinions." She didn't answer, but her brother whispered. "You said his footwork was sloppy." Jamal's smile dropped. "Oh yeah?" he said, raising an eyebrow. "You think you know boxing?" Raina stayed quiet. She didn't want trouble, but Jamal wouldn't let it go. "Why don't you show us what you got?" he said, pointing to the ring. "Come on, let's see if you can back that up." People in the crowd started to laugh and cheer. "Yeah, let her fight." Someone yelled. "No," she said, shaking her head. "I'm not here for that." "Oh, come on," Jamal said loudly. "Scared? Afraid to break a nail?" Her brother looked at her, eyes full of worry and pride. And in that moment, something inside her shifted. She remembered her father's garage, where he taught her how to throw a punch. She remembered the pain of being told she'd never be strong enough, never good enough. She stood up slowly. "Fine," she said. "I'll fight you." The room exploded. Phones came out to record. People shoved each other for a better view. Some laughed, others whispered. "Is she serious?" Jamal burst out laughing. "This'll be quick," he said. "I hope you brought a stretcher." She didn't answer. She just stepped toward the ring, climbed in, and rolled her shoulders like she was shaking off years of weight. Someone handed her a pair of gloves, old and cracked, but they fit just fine. Her hands were steady as she tied them, across from her. Jamal stretched his arms and danced in place, full of confidence. "Don't say I didn't warn you," he said. Raina stood still, silent, breathing slowly. Her brother watched from the side, holding onto the post, his heart pounding. The ref looked just as confused as everyone else, but he shrugged and said, "You ready?" Raina nodded. Jamal grinned. The bell rang, and that's when everything started to change. Raina didn't charge. She didn't freeze either. She moved not like someone trying to survive, but like someone who had done this before. Jamal threw a lazy jab, expecting her to flinch. She didn't. She ducked under it and stepped to the side, calm as water. A murmur moved through the crowd. Jamal frowned. "Lucky," he muttered. He tried again, this time faster, but Raina saw it coming. She blocked, then stepped back, eyes sharp. Something about her wasn't right, not in the way he expected. She didn't look scared. she didn't look like a joke anymore. The crowd quieted a little, phone still recording, people leaning forward. And Jamal, for the first time, had to take her seriously. Raina adjusted her gloves, breathed in, and waited. This wasn't just a fight now. This was the beginning of something none of them saw coming. And deep inside, Raina knew she wasn't going to lose. Not today, not to him, not ever. Jamal danced side to side like he always did. Shoulders loose, bouncing on his toes, he wore that same smug grin he gave every first-time opponent, the kind that said he'd already won before the fight even began. People shouted from the crowd, laughing, betting, filming. Some shouted for blood. Some called Raina brave. Most thought she was crazy, but Raina didn't hear them. She couldn't. The moment the bell rang, her world shrank. There was no crowd. No noise, not even her brother's voice. Just the ring, her breath, and the man in front of her. Jamal threw a jab fast, testing her, expecting her to blink or stumble. Instead, she tilted her head, just enough to let the glove slip past her cheek like a breeze. He laughed and circled her. "All right, okay," he said. "You got some legs on you." She didn't respond. She was watching him, not his arms, but his shoulders. The way his hips turned before a punch, the lazy way he lowered his guard after swinging. Her father used to say the punch that lands is the one you never see. Jamal feinted a hook and came in. With a quick cross, Raina ducked, stepped to the side, and tapped his ribs with her glove. It wasn't hard, not yet, but it was sharp and fast, enough to sting. The crowd made a sound, half surprise, half excitement. Jamal's grin faltered just a bit. He shook his head and bounced again. "You hit like a mosquito," he said, but his voice didn't sound as cocky. He moved in faster now, real punches. His right hand whistled through the air. His left shot low toward her stomach. Raina blocked, her arms catching most of it, but the weight pushed her back. She slid across the mat, her shoes scraping. Pain bloomed in her forearms. But she stood her ground, eyes locked on him. She didn't blink. Jamal noticed. He swung again, wide and loud, trying to scare her. But she ducked, moved left, and came up with a jab to his temple. It wasn't powerful, but it was clean. He blinked, stumbled half a step. Now the crowd was fully awake. Phones were lifted high. People started yelling things like, "Yo, she got him," and "Don't sleep on her." Raina felt none of it. Her breath was deep and steady. She moved like she was dancing with a memory. Each step a lesson she learned long ago in a garage that smelled of oil and sweat and her father's cologne. Jamal rushed her now, angry. He launched a flurry, jabs, hooks, body shots, fast and wild. She blocked what she could, stepped away from what she couldn't. One blow caught her side, and she winced. But she didn't back down. Her legs ached, her ribs throbbed, but her mind was calm. Jamal's rage made him sloppy. His punches got wider, louder, easier to read. He shouted when he missed, cursed when she slipped under. Then she caught him again, a jab to the chin. Quick and sharp like a slap, he backed off, eyes burning. The crowd was no longer laughing, now they were cheering. No one had ever made Jamal move backward. Raina stood in the center of the ring, chest rising and falling, blood buzzing in her ears. But her face was steady. Jamal's corner shouted at him, trying to calm him, but he waved them off. He wasn't thinking anymore, he was reacting, and Raina, she was just getting started. Her brother watched with both hands gripping the ropes, eyes wide, mouth open. He'd never seen her like this, never seen her like a storm wrapped in skin. The bell rang again, ending the first round. Jamal stormed back to his side, throwing his gloves against the ropes, breathing hard, muttering under his breath. Raina walked slowly to her corner, wiping sweat from her brow. Her brother handed her a water bottle, and she took a sip. "You okay?" he asked, voice shaking. She nodded once. "I'm fine," she whispered, "just tired of being quiet." Across the ring, Jamal stared at her, no longer smiling. He didn't see a girl anymore. He saw a problem. And the whole gym, once so sure of the outcome, now leaned in close. No one knew what would happen next, but they all felt it. This wasn't going to be the easy humiliation Jamal had planned. This was becoming a real fight. And Raina, the woman nobody took seriously when she walked in, had already done the unthinkable. She made everyone doubt the champion. She made him bleed, not with her fists yet, but with fear, and fear is always the first cut. The lights in the gym seemed dimmer now, not because they changed, but because every eye was focused on her. Raina stood still, quiet, her arms resting at her sides, while across from her, Jamal sat with his head lowered, elbows on his knees, trying to calm the fire building in his chest. No one was laughing anymore, not even his crew. The mood had shifted, something had changed in the air. The girl who stepped into the ring as a joke was now being watched like a threat. Raina didn't care about that. She didn't come for attention. She didn't come to prove anything to the crowd. She came for her brother. But now something deeper had taken over. She closed her eyes briefly and saw her father's hands, rough and scarred, wrapping tape around her small fists in the garage. She remembered the way he whispered before every practice, "Don't fight to win, Raina. Fight to be free." Her breath deepened, and the pain in her ribs faded into the background, replaced by something else, something heavy and electric. When the bell rang for the second round, she didn't hesitate. She stepped forward with the calm of someone who had already decided not to lose. Jamal stood quickly, his face tight, jaw clenched. He was done playing. He charged at her like a storm, fists flying fast and wide, hoping to crush her confidence in one brutal rush. Raina didn't back away. She slipped under his arm, turned her body, and delivered a clean shot to his side. It wasn't hard enough to drop him, but it told him she wasn't scared. Jamal growled, a real sound full of anger. He threw a left hook that grazed her shoulder, another punch that caught her arm. She winced but didn't falter. Her feet moved with rhythm, not speed, not panic rhythm. Like a song only she could hear. He came again. But she read his shoulders and ducked just before the blow came, then responded with a jab to his nose, quick and sharp. Blood sprayed, just a little, but enough to make the room gasp. Jamal stumbled back a step, blinking. He wiped at his face and stared at his glove, seeing the red smear. For a second, his eyes met hers, and what he saw wasn't fear. It was something colder, stronger, like steel hidden in silence. He stepped back in with a roar, swinging wild, but his anger made him blind. His gloves hit air, the ropes her guard, but not her face. Raina waited for the right opening, not rushing, not showing off. Her father once said that even a good punch at the wrong time becomes a mistake. So she waited, then struck. A left hook to the jaw, a right to the body, a step to the side as he swung wide again. The crowd roared, shouting her name now, not just watching her. They were with her. Jamal stumbled, his chest rising fast, sweat pouring down his face. He'd never had to try this hard, not in this gym. Not against someone he thought was beneath him, and never against someone who refused to be broken. Raina was hurting too. Her ribs ached with every breath. Her arms were sore from blocking, her legs tired from moving constantly. But none of that mattered. She wasn't fighting Jamal anymore. She was fighting every time someone said she wasn't enough. Every time her voice was ignored. Every time she was told to sit quietly, to behave, to stay small. And in this ring, she was anything but small. Jamal took another swing, but his timing was off. His movements were rushed, messy. She saw the opening and took it. A clean cross to his chin sent his head snapping back. The room shook with noise, people shouting, cursing, cheering, recording. He didn't fall, not yet, but his legs wobbled for the first time. He stared at her like he didn't know who she was anymore. She stared back like she always knew who she was. The bell rang again, ending the round. Raina stepped back, chest heaving. She sat on the small bench her brother held steady. "You good?" he asked, eyes wide with pride and fear. She nodded, not even smiling. "He's getting tired," she said softly. Across the ring, Jamal didn't sit. He leaned on the ropes, breathing like someone who had run through fire. His trainer yelled at him, told him to focus, to stop swinging wild. But Jamal didn't answer. He was realizing something he had never faced before. He wasn't just losing a fight, he was being exposed. The jinn that had always praised him was now watching him struggle against someone they never expected to matter. And deep down, he knew, if he didn't change something fast, this girl, this quiet, calm, serious girl, was going to do what no one else had. She was going to beat him. Asterisk. His smile was gone. The kind of grin that used to light up the gym and make the crowd believe nothing could touch him. That grin had been his armor, his signature, the thing he wore even more proudly than his gloves. But now Jamal's lips were tight, jaw clenched. Chest rising too fast, he tried to ignore the ringing in his ears, the sting in his nose where she'd struck him, the aching bruise growing across his ribs. It didn't make sense. None of this did. She wasn't supposed to make it this far. He looked across the ring and saw her again, Raina, standing still, eyes locked on him like she wasn't even tired. She was tired, of course, her arms heavy, her legs burning. But she had something he didn't, something he couldn't fake. Anymore, she had purpose. Jamal had always fought for attention, for pride, for ego. He wanted people to shout his name, to fear his fists. But she fought like she was protecting something sacred, like every punch had meaning beyond the ring. The third round began, and the energy in the gym cracked like lightning. Nobody knew what would happen now. They just knew it wasn't going to be what they expected. Jamal charged in again, fists tight, mouth open with rage. Raina didn't move yet. She waited, watched when he threw the right. She slipped it, not just avoiding it, but stepping close, inside his power, her body brushing his chest. And with perfect balance, she struck. A short hook under his chin made him stumble. The crowd screamed louder than ever. She didn't follow up, not yet. She stepped back, let him recover, let him feel the fear of being hit that clean. Jamal shook. His head tried to smile, but the smile was empty. His pride had taken more damage than his jaw. He spat on the floor, wiped sweat from his forehead, and reset his stance. "You think you're special, huh?" He hissed, his voice low. "You think this makes you a fighter?" Raina didn't answer. She didn't need to. She let her fist speak. He came again, wild again. Faster, stronger, angry, and she took a blow to the shoulder, another one to her side, the pain sharp, real, but she held firm. And then, when he dropped his left just for a second, she answered. A jab to the cheek, a right cross that cracked like thunder across his jaw, and a final blow to the body that made him grunt. He backed away, hand over his ribs, face twisted in pain. She had hurt him. Not just touched him, hurt him. The gym fell silent for one long second, the kind of silence that only comes when people forget how to breathe. And then someone shouted, "She's winning!" It was the truth, and now everyone knew it. Jamal circled her, eyes darker than before. No more jokes, no more show. This was survival now. He waited for her to come forward, but she didn't. She held her ground, centered, calm. He hated that calm. He rushed again, fist swinging, trying to break her rhythm. But she blocked one, slipped the next, and on the third, she punished him. Her right fist slammed into his ribs with a crunch that made even his fans flinch. He dropped to one knee. The ref stepped in, but Jamal waved him off, standing quickly, pride pushing him harder than sense. But his body betrayed him, his breathing uneven, his legs weak. Across the ring, Raina stood like stone. Her face didn't gloat, didn't mock. She wasn't fighting to humiliate him. She was fighting to rise, to show her brother and everyone watching that power comes in silence too, in patience, in control. Jamal wiped blood from his mouth, raised his gloves again, but the fear was there now, in his eyes, in the way he hesitated before swinging. He didn't know how to fight someone who didn't care about fame. He didn't know how to break someone who didn't come to win, but to prove she already belonged. Raina moved in with sharp footwork, a jab, another, Stepping back before he could answer, the round neared its end. And Jamal knew he hadn't done enough. The crowd was no longer on his side. Their eyes followed her. Their voices called her name, Raina, Raina. The bell rang. But it felt more like a warning than a pause. Jamal stumbled to his corner, confused. Broken, sweaty, his coach tried to shake him awake with rough words. But his eyes drifted again to her. She sat quietly, her brother beside her, holding her water, his hands trembling. "You're amazing," he whispered. Voice cracking with emotion, she didn't smile, but her eyes softened for him. "Told you we were strong," she said. And across the ring, Jamal sat in silence, realizing that this wasn't just a fight anymore. It was a reckoning, and the girl he tried to embarrass had already taken everything from him, his confidence, his rhythm, and maybe, just maybe, his crown. The ropes felt tighter around his back now, not because they moved, but because Jamal Barnes didn't know how to sit still anymore. Every second felt like it ticked louder than the last. His lungs burned, his fists trembled, and his thoughts wouldn't stop racing. Across the ring sat the same young black woman he had laughed at just minutes earlier, but she didn't look the same to him anymore. Not even close. Raina wasn't breathing heavy, though her body was sore and aching. She wasn't slouched or broken. She sat straight, her brother gently wrapping a cool towel around her neck. She wasn't just still, she was calm, and that calm was driving Jamal insane. He had been punched before, rocked, bruised, even stunned, but never outpaced like this, never outsmarted, never outclassed, especially not by someone he had invited in as a joke. People in the crowd weren't watching him anymore. They were leaning forward every time Raina moved. They were whispering her name, posting clips, chanting like she was a champion they had always believed in. But the truth was, no one had believed in her when she walked into that gym. Not until she bled for it, hit for it, stood tall for it. The bell rang for the fourth round. Raina stood first. Slow and smooth, Jamal followed, his body heavier than it had ever felt. He thought if he came out aggressive enough, he could shake her up, get the rhythm back, regain control. So he exploded forward, fists flying, swinging wild, his shoulder crashing into her guard. But Raina didn't panic. She didn't fall back. She pivoted, caught his weight, and sent a crushing jab straight to his nose. It bent sideways, blood gushed. He stumbled back, hand to his face, eyes wide in pain and disbelief. The crowd gasped. Phones rose again. A voice shouted, "She broke him." Jamal roared and came at her again. But it wasn't boxing anymore. It was desperation. Survival. He swung too wide, too slow, and Raina slipped under, danced left, and struck again. A hook to the body. A quick uppercut that snapped his head. He tripped into the corner, arms over his chest, breathing like he was drowning. Raina didn't chase. She waited, poised like a storm waiting for a crack in the sky. She remembered what her father told her long ago. Control the pace, and they'll never control you. So she did. Every move she made was measured, deliberate, each step a message. Not just to Jamal, but to the whole room. She didn't come here for his respect. She came to take it. Jamal's crew stood frozen, no longer laughing, not even shouting. The people who used to cheer his every punch now looked at him like they were watching a legend fall. He wiped his face, blinked through blood, and looked across the ring at her again. And that's when it really hit him. He had already lost something, and it wasn't just the round. It was the fear, the power, the hold he had over everyone in that building. Raina had taken it with steady hands and quiet fury. The ref looked between them, unsure if the fight should continue, but Jamal lifted his gloves again. Shaky but determined. He didn't want to quit, but something inside him already had. Raina stepped forward slowly now. Her movements almost gentle. She jabbed, then stepped away, jabbed again, testing, poking, dancing. Jamal swung, but it was hollow, not dangerous anymore. She ducked under and came up with a clean shot to the chin that rattled his head back again. The room echoed with gasps. Jamal grabbed the ropes to stay upright, his knees buckling, still. He wouldn't fall. Reyna saw it in his eyes, the stubbornness, the pride, the refusal to give in. But she also saw something else. He was scared, not of her punches, but of what it meant if she beat him. He would no longer be the untouchable, the king. He would be the man who tried to humiliate a woman and got humbled in front of the world. The bell rang, saving him again. He leaned into the corner, forehead pressed against the post. Across the ring, Reyna exhaled, sat down, and looked at her brother. He was grinning now, eyes full of tears he tried to hide. She reached out and squeezed his hand, no words needed. In the crowd, something had shifted completely. People weren't just watching a fight anymore. They were witnessing a story unfold, one they would tell others. One that would spread beyond that gym. Reyna, the quiet woman who stepped into the ring as a joke, was now the center of something bigger. She didn't raise her fists for praise, but for every person who had ever been overlooked, laughed at, or told to stay silent. And Jamal, once the symbol of dominance and confidence, now stood at the edge of a fall he never saw coming. It was supposed to be a moment of glory, not for her, but for him. Jamal had invited the cameras, the crowd, the spotlight, because this was meant to be another easy win, another clip for his highlight reel, another notch in a record no one dared challenge. But now he stood at the edge of collapse, blood running down his face, his breath loud and shaky, and his pride, what little was left, barely holding him up. The fourth round had been brutal, not because of how many punches she threw, but because of how much she refused to be broken. And now, as he sat hunched in his corner, hearing nothing but the pounding of his own heart, Jamal felt something he hadn't felt since his first street fight as a teenager. He felt powerless. Reyna hadn't just hit him, she had unmade him, piece by piece. With every blocked swing, every perfectly timed jab, every calm stare that told him, "I don't need your approval to be strong." The crowd had changed too. Their voices no longer fed him, they fed her, and somehow, she hadn't even asked for it. She hadn't shouted, hadn't mocked, hadn't flexed after any hit. She just fought. And that was what made her dangerous. The bell rang again, slow and heavy, like it was ringing for something sacred, not savage. Jamal forced himself to stand, but his legs didn't want to listen. His coach yelled at him to keep his hands up, to swing tighter, to stay sharp, but the words fell like water on stone. His body was still in the ring, but his will had wandered somewhere behind the ropes. Reyna stood too, wincing quietly from a deep ache in her ribs, bruises blooming along her arms and legs like battle paint. But she didn't hesitate. She took her stance, eyes steady, breathing slow. There was no more fear in her, only focus. As Jamal stepped forward, she watched his feet, not his fists. She already knew his rhythm, and now he was slower, more uncertain. He lunged with a right, but she saw it coming. Before his fist even moved, she slipped under and struck his ribs again, this time with more force. He gasped, staggered back, hand clutching his side, eyes wide. Reyna didn't follow. Not yet. She waited again, calm like the ocean before a storm. The crowd started chanting her name again, louder now. A wave of voices crashing over the room. Jamal could barely hear them. He only heard the thudding inside his chest, the realization that this wasn't about strength anymore. This was about control, and she had it all. He rushed again, swinging like a man drowning, and she ducked low, rose up and caught him clean under the chin with an uppercut that made his feet leave the mat for just a second. He fell, not hard, not flat, but he fell, one knee down, one glove on the ground, and in that moment, the room froze. Even time seemed to hold its breath. The ref stood still, watching. Jamal's team looked away, unsure if they should shout or stay quiet. Reyna stood across from him, her chest rising slowly, fists still raised. But her face showed no pride, no triumph, just quiet understanding. Jamal looked up at her, blood in his mouth, tears in his eyes that had nothing to do with pain, because he finally saw her. Not as a woman, not as an opponent, but as a truth he had Tried to avoid his whole life. She wasn't beneath him. She had never been beneath him. He had built his reputation on knocking down easy targets, loud and showy wins. But this was the real fight, and it was slipping away from him. The ref began to count, slowly 1, 2, 3. Jamal blinked, his body telling him to stay down, his pride whispering to stand 4, 5. He pushed himself up slowly, legs wobbling, and stood just before the count hit 8. The ref nodded and allowed it to continue. Reina stepped forward, not to destroy him, but to finish what had already begun. She jabbed once, light, then twice. More, each one a question he couldn't answer. And then, when he flinched, she moved in. Her final combination fast, precise, unrelenting left, right, hook. Cross each punch breaking another layer of the myth they once called steel fist. He stumbled again, arms falling to his sides. The ref jumped in and waved his arms. It was over. The crowd erupted, people jumping, crying, screaming her name, recording every second. Knowing they had just witnessed something historic, Jamal slumped into the corner, his body broken, but not crushed. Reina dropped her arms and exhaled, the weight of years lifting from her shoulders. She didn't smile, not yet. She looked to her brother first, who ran to her side, arms wide, eyes full of love. She knelt down and hugged him, whispering only one word: "We did it." And in that ring, under the heat of the lights, surrounded by sweat, blood, and disbelief, Reina Washington didn't just win a fight, she rewrote the rules. The camera flash didn't faze her, not even when it went off right in her face. Reina didn't blink, didn't flinch, didn't move like someone who needed attention. She stood in the center of the ring as people swarmed around her, but her gaze stayed locked on one thing, her little brother gripping the ropes. Eyes wide, heart thundering in his chest. He had never seen anyone look at his sister the way they were looking at her now. Phones pointed, mouths hanging open. Even grown men with bruised knuckles and proud egos just stared, like they had to relearn everything they thought they knew about fighters. And Jamal, the man who once ruled this gym like a lion in a cage, now sat in the corner, eyes down, his hands resting on his knees, the blood drying on his face like fading paint. He wasn't angry anymore, just quiet, like someone who had been punched not in the face, but in the soul. Nobody offered him water. Nobody cheered him on, not even his crew. The crowd had changed sides. But more than that, they had changed direction. They had seen something they couldn't ignore, and they would talk about it long after the night ended. Reina helped her brother through the ropes and down into the ring. His hands were shaking as he ran to her, and when he finally reached her, he didn't say anything. He just hugged her as tight as he could. She bent down to his height, closed her eyes, and for the first time since the match began, she let herself breathe. A reporter stepped forward, voice loud and eager. "Reina, what made you say yes to fighting him?" She stood slowly and turned to the microphone, but her voice was soft. "He told me I didn't belong here," she said, "so I wanted to remind myself that I did." A hush fell over the gym again, the kind that happens when truth is heavier than any punch. "Do you want to fight again?" Another reporter asked. Flashing their camera, Reina glanced at her brother, then back at them. "I didn't come here to become famous," she said. "I came here to show someone important to me that we don't have to stay quiet when we're pushed. We don't have to let people laugh at us and walk away." She didn't say Jamal's name, and she didn't have to. He stood slowly in the background, walking toward her with slow, uncertain steps. One side of his face was swollen, his nose bandaged, pride nowhere in sight. When he reached her, he didn't speak right away. He just looked at her, like someone trying to understand how they had ended up on the wrong side of a story. "I didn't think you'd hit that hard," he muttered, voice quiet but clear. Reina tilted her head. "That's the thing," she said gently. "You didn't think." He let out a breath, half laugh, half regret. "You got that right." The crowd listened in silence, watching a king lay down his crown without anyone asking him to. "You were better than me in there," he admitted, eyes meeting hers. And I've never said that to anybody. Raina didn't smile, but she gave a nod of respect. Not for the compliment, but for the honesty. I hope you remember this the next time someone smaller, quieter, or different steps into your space. She said, strength doesn't always look the way you expect. Jamal nodded and slowly extended his hand. Bruised and sore, she looked at it, paused, then shook it, and just like that, the story that started with mockery ended with respect. The gym emptied slowly after that, but the echoes remained. People left talking not about Jamal's loss, but Raina's rise. Clips of the fight went viral within hours. Woman beats undefeated boxer. She silenced the whole gym. Queen of the ring. None of that mattered. That night, she walked home with her brother, arm around his shoulder. The streetlights warm and soft above them. You were amazing, he said, still. Sounding like he hadn't fully processed what he saw, she smiled, the first real smile all night. You believed in me before they did, she whispered. That's why I didn't fall. He looked up at her, his eyes shining. Can I be strong? Like you one day? You already are, she said. You just haven't stepped into your ring yet. Somewhere behind them, in a quiet gym with bruised walls and forgotten dreams, the ring stood empty now. But the ropes still swayed gently, like they remembered, and from that night on, people didn't ask who Jamal beat anymore. They asked who Raina was. It started with whispers, soft ones, the kind that don't feel like praise at first, just quiet curiosity. Did you hear about the girl who dropped Jamal? They'd say, she came out of nowhere, but Raina didn't come out of nowhere. She came from a place no one cared to look. The kind of place where stories don't start with victory, but with silence, with long days, with people walking past. You like you're invisible. The gym had returned to its normal routine the following week. The bags still swung, the gloves still hit, and fighters still showed up to prove they were tough. But something in the air had changed. Raina hadn't been seen since that night. Not by the regulars anyway. Some said she left town. Some said she went pro. Others claimed she turned down every call, every offer, every camera. But she hadn't gone far, just a few blocks over in a smaller, quieter gym that didn't even have working air conditioning. Raina stood barefoot on cracked floorboards, teaching a group of little girls how to wrap their wrists. Her brother sat on a bench nearby, holding a clipboard, grinning every time someone called him coach's assistant. The girls watched Raina like she was a superhero, not because she was famous, but because she listened when they spoke, because she didn't yell, didn't brag, didn't make them feel small. She showed them how to jab, how to block, how to breathe when fear crept in, and how to stand even when everything in you says to fall. The gym didn't have much, but it had her, and that was more than enough. One afternoon, a tall man appeared at the entrance, hood up, sunglasses on. Raina didn't need to see his face to know who it was. She kept teaching, voice steady, as if nothing had changed. Jamal waited, leaning against the wall, watching the class, not saying a word. When the session ended, Raina walked over, towel around her neck, sweat on her brow. You look different without the lights, she said quietly. You look the same, he replied. Like you don't need them. She didn't answer, just handed him a bottle of water, which he accepted without a word. I've been thinking about that night, he said, replaying it over and over. Not just the punches, but everything I didn't see. I wasn't trying to humiliate you, she said. I just couldn't stay quiet anymore. He nodded, slow and sincere. I deserved every second of it. She looked at him, not with pity, not with pride, just with calm honesty. So what now? She asked. I came to ask if you'd train me, he said, voice steady but low. Not to fight, not for show, just to be better. She blinked, surprised, then tilted her head. Better at boxing? No, he said. Better at being someone who doesn't need to tear others down to feel tall. Raina didn't speak right away. She looked past him, toward the little girls now giggling in the corner, their hands covered in chalk and dreams. You'll start on the bags, she said. No special treatment, no speeches. He smiled for the first time in a long time. I didn't come for special, he said. I came for real. And so Jamal stayed. He trained beside the girls, took every hit, followed every drill, and slowly, the weight of who he was began to shift. People stopped calling him Steel Fist and started calling him Coach J. But more importantly, they stopped whispering Raina's name in surprise. Now they spoke it with certainty, like a promise, like a truth that couldn't be erased. She never chased the spotlight, never accepted the talk show invites or the brand deals. She chose instead to stay rooted where she was needed most. And years later, when one of her students entered the same gym she once fought in and knocked out, rising star in 3 rounds, reporters showed up again, eager to know where this girl came from, who trained her, what inspired her. The girl smiled and said softly, I was trained by the woman who beat the man everyone said couldn't lose. Raina watched that fight on a cracked screen in her living room, her brother beside her, legs propped up, both of them laughing and cheering. Guess you really did change the game, he said, nudging her shoulder. She leaned back, eyes twinkling. I didn't change the game, she said. I just reminded it who it forgot. And somewhere deep, inside a ring that no longer shook with arrogance, but with truth, the echo of her footsteps still lived.